Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
Hi, I'm Faye.
And I'm James. So, Faye, looks like you've had another hectic week. What have you been up to?
So on Tuesday, I went to a Cambridge Launchpad partner event. It was really good. There were loads of companies there, some existing partners and some potential new partners. And there was a really good panel, including Railpen, Cambridge University, Health Partners and Illumina. And then I bumped into loads of people, as you would expect, Mills and Reeves, Coel, many more, probably way too many to actually mention. But it was a really good event, and that passion of Cambridge to really contribute to STEM for the next generation came through really loud and clear. So that was good. Then on Wednesday, there was an Innovate Cambridge breakfast briefing, and listeners will know we talk about Innovate Cambridge a fair amount on this podcast. It was kind of the event that was launching and announcing Catherine Chapman formally as the executive director, taking over from Tabitha Goldstorp, who's run it for the first year, and she starts full-time on the 1st of August. So there is still a little bit of a transition there. And so they really started with a celebration of the scale of support across that, and they call it the triple helix of industry, government and academia. And pretty much everyone from those three different areas was represented in the room.
Nice. Yeah, I couldn't make that one, but it's good to hear that the momentum is remaining on all of that stuff. Hopefully that getting younger people involved in STEM will carry over to Cambridge Tech Week as well, because obviously the Friday is very much themed around that idea.
Yeah, and they had it. So the event was actually in the new clubhouse, the Innovation Clubhouse. The builders literally moved out the day before, so it was really close. But it was great to be in there. It's a really nice, big, open space in the Botanic House, really close to the central station. It doesn't open until September later on this year. But it's kind of really interesting because it's not a co-working space or a base for companies to go and plonk themselves in. It's really about drop-in meeting spaces, and when you're taking people into Cambridge, say it's for inward investment. So I kind of like the idea of it. And going back to what you were saying then about involving everyone else, one of the things that they have there is this cafe space. And rather than just outsourcing it to who you normally outsource cafes to, they're actually really following one of the points of the 16 initiatives, good jobs for local people. So Cambridge Sustainable Food and Abbey People are actually the people who are going to be providing the team and the training opportunities for local people within that cafe, which I think is really nice.
Yeah, very good. Well, in comparison, I didn't get out as much this week, actually, although did some planning around Cambridge Tech Week. So the Monday and the Friday of that week are going to be at the Bradfield Centre, which is exciting. So just starting to figure that out. And also doing some work around the upcoming Tech Nation event, which is on the 13th of May at the Bradfield, which is the regional final for their Rising Stars competition. So nice to have the Tech Nation folks coming back again. And you're a judge, I believe, of that.
I was one of the national judges, but we both did the judging of the regional ones last year. I think because it's in transition into the new owners, things have been a little bit different this year. There's a couple of interesting companies in there, developing experts we've seen before. I think they actually went through Rising Stars before as well, but they're back in, and SafePoint is also in, which are an interesting company. So yeah, it'll be good to see on the 13th who else is there and who wins again.
Yeah, and I think the final is during London Tech Week, which I'm going to. So I'll try and report back on what goes on in London Tech Week as well.
Superb. So lots of big news at the moment. Obviously, there was Darktrace last week, and we'll touch on them again in a moment. But actually, the news this week, when I was going through it, when Jamie from Business Weekly sent it through, it's all about big numbers this week. So do you want to start with a few, James?
Okay, yeah, this is good for the listeners. Big numbers. So first off, breast cancer pioneer Endomag is set to become the latest Cambridge business snapped up by the US. The privately owned company is to be acquired by Hologic Inc., a NASDAQ-quoted firm based in Marlborough, Massachusetts, for $310 million. So Endomag develops and sells breast surgery localization and lymphatic tracing technologies.
Yeah, it's great news for Endomag. I know quite a few of the people over there in the team, so I'm sure that they are elated. And as I said, it comes hot on the heels of Darktrace's $5.3 billion sale to US private equity firm Thomas Bravo last week. And there was also CamLab Limited, there to be acquired by Calibre Scientific for an undisclosed sum. So, yeah, as we've both said, all of these deals involve US buyers, reflecting that continuing trend of overseas investment into the UK market. And I know that's probably an entire podcast again on its own as to the pros and cons of that. And I think lots of people, Gerard Grech, etc., have been, commenting on that over the last week.
Yeah, like you say, we should probably do a podcast on that. So we always like data, and KPMG have just released their private enterprise venture pulse report. So incredibly, nearly £335 million or $423 million of VC money was invested into businesses across East Anglia in Q1 of 2024. So that's just 3 months. That represents 24 deals completed across Cambridge, Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, according to data compiled by PitchBook. The largest raise came from Cambridge-based drug discovery Apollo Therapeutics, which was $260 million, which was ranked one of the top 10 largest financings in Europe during the first quarter. Other standout deals included Cambridge Mechatronics Limited for $40 million and £25 million for Mission Therapeutics and £6.7 million for Tagonomics, the first company to occupy the new Lumina Ventures lab space in Cambridge.
Yeah, so we said they were huge. And so you've got the acquisitions and you've got the funding. This is like literally complete extremes, isn't it? So Joe Faulkner, who's the Cambridge and Norwich senior partner at KPMG, posted on LinkedIn that it's a real sign of the strength and dynamism across the east of England. And he alluded to his knowledge that there was much more to follow. So I think, we may, obviously it takes a while for some of these reports to come out, but 2024 has certainly been a super strong start for many. And I know one of them, again, you just mentioned Cambridge Mechatronics, we've got on the podcast in the next month or so too.
We have. Okay, great. Well, that's the end of this week's news. Just a quick I've already mentioned the TechNation event on the 13th of May. And there's also the Cambridge AI meetup, which is on the 23rd of May. And this month, the group are looking at AI in life sciences. So check out bradfieldcentre.com for information on those. And a quick reminder, if you're an event organizer and you'd like us to give your tech event a plug, just drop us a line and we will be happy to do so. So Faye, let's move on to today's podcast. What's in this week's episode?
Yes, so back in March, I was at the first Invest in Innovation pitch event of 2024 at the University of Essex. So for today's episode, we've invited John Stenhouse on alongside some of the winners of the day.
John, we've got a lot to cover in this episode, but why don't we start with what's happening at the University of Essex and the event, the Angels event that you recently ran?
Well, thank you for inviting me to the podcast. Angels at Essex was formed about 4 years ago by the University of Essex to plug a gap, a perceived gap in the market, where really good innovative ideas and clever founders weren't getting any visibility to the investment network. It was too tough. And over the last 4 years, we have worked with over 500 businesses, all highly innovative. And over 100 of those have managed to generate £70 million worth of equity investment, right, which we consider to be a success story.
And do these businesses need to be based in Essex or have a relationship with the university? What's the criteria?
Well, we started out thinking that we would only work with Essex businesses. But we very quickly found out that COVID was causing a little bit of a problem at the time, but I won't hark on that. So we went national, and we have businesses from all over the UK, what UKRI call levelling up. Well, we've leveled up and we've had investors from all over the globe. So it actually works very well indeed.
And in terms of the university itself, is entrepreneurship taught in the university? You know, what's the kind of startup culture within the university? Is it very supportive? How does that work?
It's working very well at the moment. We've been running entrepreneurship programs for over 5 years at the university and encouraging the academics to become more commercially aware as they're teaching. It didn't matter what subject. And effectively, every single student, all 16,000 students at the university, have access to entrepreneurship programs regardless of whatever they're studying. Right. And that has brought about some very interesting collaborations between students from different academic departments coming together to formulate businesses. We're seeing a lot more of those now, and we're starting to see some really interesting ones which will eventually go down the equity route. But at the moment, they're mainly grant funded.
And has the competition been helpful to give those students, you know, an appreciation of seeing entrepreneurship up close and understanding the stories of the founders, getting to meet the founders that are pitching? You know, has that been a helpful part of the kind of encouragement of entrepreneurship with the student population?
Yes, it becomes inspirational. In other words, they can aspire to do this and they can see that it is difficult, it is hard, but with perseverance and a lot of effort, they can actually achieve quite a lot.
So, John, let's move on to the pitch day then, if we can. What was the format? What happened? How many people presented? Can you just give us a little bit of a flavour?
Yes, we selected some really good businesses from our portfolio, from all sectors. We weren't specific. And we had 8 businesses pitching, and they all pitched extremely well. We were quite proud of how they were pitching. We deliberately didn't give them a lot of tuition. We wanted them to pitch raw, if you like, and experience what it was like to be in front of a carefully selected panel of investors, plus the investor audience, because it was an investor-only audience that we actually brought together.
And so can you tell us about some of the other companies that pitched that we're not going to talk to today?
Yes, certainly. There's an interesting one which is about worm composting, which the university is actually quite keen to work with because we have a life sciences department which is quite interested in soil and composting. And this particular business came to us from another government programme in creative industries, which the crossover was quite an interesting move from creative industries to agriculture.
Jared Henderson of vermiculture, wasn't it?
That is correct, yes. Yeah. And we had such a wide range from the actual hardware and software right the way through to educational software. The whole range was there. And that really made the audience stop and think. And so the audience choice was an interesting move that we did. So we had the audience choice, we had the panel choice, and we had what we regarded as a best pitch. And I think the 3 winners, it was so close. So there was a lot of combined or joined up thinking by the audience and the panel there.
Lovely. So we're going to now pull back the curtain because there's 2 other people sitting with us right now. I'll ask you to introduce yourselves and give a quick summary of your businesses. It won't be as stressful as the evening. Peter's already shared he's suffering post-traumatic stress syndrome from your liberal use of the buzzer and cutting short of...
Are you looking at me?
Yeah, I am looking at you.
No,
yeah,
that could have been a secret just for people actually at the event.
For those that are listening and don't know, Faye was the MC for the event. So... was hot on the buzzer and keeping an eye on time. But Peter, why don't we start with you?
Well, thanks very much for inviting me. My name's Peter Schwabach. I'm the founder of Industrial Robotic Solutions. I was lucky enough to be asked to pitch at the event and also won the Best Pitch Award. We've developed a solution actually from within Essex University. And the solution we've developed is to assemble meals with robots. And this is a departure from essentially manufacturing where you make paste or soup and you create a uniform product. So this is essentially using robots and vision software to assemble meals. So we initially focused on making sandwiches, and essentially it's bringing cutting edge vision technology and then work we've done in terms of developing bespoke grippers so you can actually assemble meals. And we're lucky enough to be doing a pilot with a very large manufacturer in their factory. So it's confirmed the interest in our solution.
Sounds exciting, and we'll get into the detail of that shortly. Mark, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Mark from APPNALYSIS. We've been engaging with Essex University for probably 10 years now. We've been kind of hiring students from there, go down and kind of support various things. We've had a long relationship with the university. So it was great to be able to put our APPNALYSIS product in front of everybody and talk about it while down there. So that was kind of, really cool. To explain a little bit about what APPNALYSIS is, it's a SaaS product which we are offering to mobile app product owner type companies, and where they're able to help them kind of build better apps and better roadmaps. Because the problem that we have seen through my other company, Coderus, is when we get requirements, people find it very hard to do competitor analysis or to see which technology horses to back.
Right.
So what we've done is that we've provided a way to actually do that in an automated way. Because while most people do one or two apps, which is quite common, you look at it on your phone, you write down your list. But then if you wanted to look at the top 100, it takes a long time to do those sort of things with that. So it was a problem that we were seeing within Coderus, and we've been offering that to our clients with that going forward, and that's kind of been built in up. And we were using it as a tool in-house, so we've wanted now to take that forward and offer it to the wider public and, join the pitch to raise investment for it. And it was fantastic that people actually thought it was the best idea. And we won that award, and that, and I was actually gobsmacked because there were so many fantastic other ideas down there. And it was like, I didn't expect it.
Excellent. And there was one other winner, Audience Choice winner, I believe. That was Bravely Cultured. James from there can't be with us today, unfortunately. But Faye, I think you're going to represent James in the conversation. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I did. I actually had a conversation with him. We knew straight away he couldn't make this date, and so he's provided some updates. So I'm not going to pretend to be James, because that would just be wholly inappropriate. But I will certainly share with you some of the information he sent. So they won the Audience Choice. They're a really interesting company using novel marine bacteria to produce green chemicals without competing with food and freshwater reserves. So their initial focus is replacing things called surfactants, and these are the bulk ingredients that are present in personal and home care cleaning products that allow oils and water to mix. And there's a whole explanation about them. But the idea behind Bravely Cultured is that they are going to answer the issues that these surfactants cause by developing biosurfactants or green surfactants made by microorganisms. Like I said, they're a really interesting company, and they've got lots of different plans into how they can build a new product that is cheaper, uses seawater as feedstocks, and get some scalable production in there.
Excellent. Okay, well, I was going to kick off with a question, and it's a genuine question, because you've obviously both got commercial traction. So why apply for a competition like this? What's the benefit? Because we have a lot of founders that listen to the podcast, and it's always interesting, I think, to get the perspective of founders. And you're obviously time poor people. Why would you go through that process of applying to a pitching competition? What benefits do you gain from that?
Very good question. I think in our case it has to do where we sit in the kind of funding journey. Were we to have sales of 50 million a year, or were we kind of flavor of the month where we were already attracting private equity, there'd be no need to do it. Where we are on the journey is we've developed a product in lab effectively. We're about to test that product in factories. And therefore, our profile and the profile of angel investors works very well. because you have people who may want to invest £100,000, but also bring a significant experience and knowledge. So a lot of the people who are investing have set up their own firms, come from private equity. So you're essentially gathering people who are providing money, but also can take you to the next point in the journey. And obviously, in our case, if these trials prove to be very successful, at that point we would go to the more traditional, VCs and private equity. So just from where we sit as a company in our journey, it's a very useful setting to be in and to pitch to these sort of investors.
From our side, we're on a slightly different path to Peter, because this is the first time I've actually going out to looking for investment for AppNalysis. And while as Codris, which is a commercial company, has clients and it does what it does, for AppNalysis, what I'm seeing is, one is to kind of get the message out there, but also to help build awareness for this, for if we're kind of going forward. And that was kind of very much what we're trying to do now, is get AppNalysis out into the public eye more, see what people are thinking about it, because, we've seen great traction within our customer base, but it's now kind of taken that to the next level and getting feedback from investors about pitching, because that's relatively a new thing for me, and to see what they say, because some things which are obvious to me are not necessarily obvious to the other side. So be able to have that, and kind of, as John mentioned, I had prepared the pitch deck a little bit. It wasn't completely raw, but it was pretty raw.
The judges were great. They were a real mix of judges from different backgrounds. But I thought, I don't know what you think about this, John, I thought they were pretty challenging with their questions as well.
I actually think they were quite lightweight. They could have gone a lot deeper. But the whole idea was to give some real life experience to those people presenting. And I think the judges actually handled that side of it quite carefully. It's a tough world out there when you're looking for equity investment. And the more people you talk to, the better it gets. But people will ask some really deep and pressing questions, which will put you on the spot. And so these guys, all of them, all 8 presenters, actually handled the situation extremely well. I was quite proud that they put in a good show in that respect. But the questions that the panel asked were all very relevant. There was no superfluous questions there. They were all very meaningful. And the feedback from the panel was very interesting. Off the record, I can't talk about it here, but there were some very interesting comments coming back, which I have fed to the relative people involved.
And from an organisation perspective, you must have thought carefully about who you wanted in the room in terms of the audience as well as the judges. How did you go about assembling and getting people engaged with the event?
Actually selecting the judging panel was I won't say it was easy, it was calculated and it worked well. I chose 7 people for the panel and 5 accepted. So that gave me confidence. For the audience, we could only invite investors, and we limited the number for the size of the room, and we didn't want to make it too big. Okay, we wanted it to be handled carefully. And so the investors who turned up, I was very impressed with some of the names that actually came along. Obviously, I can't mention the names, but there were some very interesting characters that turned up. And we had everything from actually VC firms down to high net worth individuals, angel groups, syndicates, were all there. And that was nice.
Remember, so at the start, I actually said into the audience, who here are from the investment community? And you could tell they were a bit like, we don't really want to raise our hands here, because they were trying to fly incognito. But it was really important for everyone to see that there were, a lot of serious people in the room. So I want to bring the question back now to Peter and Mark, which is, we've heard that the judges did a really good job. What did they ask you that Mark, you alluded to this. What did they ask you that you weren't quite ready for, or what have you learned from that pitch that you did that you'd change for the next time?
It was kind of like the information which I had already done. So things, for kind of market research, knowing the answers to, why people felt the product was, why they needed it. There's about like 11 steps in a pitch and what you kind of follow. And, the first one is kind of like the problem. So I defined the problem, but I didn't necessarily put in all the bits because I thought it was obvious. Mm-hmm. And I think from that is kind of making sure that they're kind of clarity and also concise of delivering all of that information with that. And some of the things which was also trying to balance the level of depth to explain the product. And some kind of felt, I went too deep, and then some felt it was too light. Yeah. And it was to try to kind of work out that balance with that for kind of going forward. So I've kind of taken that back and kind of, rejigged a lot of things, which made it then easier to then present that back in a quicker way. So it's more obvious instead of, putting, like a paragraph or two of text up on the slide, for that with that. So it's very much kind of presentation and stepping back from the pitch and kind of putting on a fresh pair of eyes if I'm looking at it.
Yeah. And I know that James, and I think it was James and Natalia were the only ones who presented as a duo, weren't they? Which actually I thought was quite interesting as well. But I think when they went away, they were like, they'd left the economics, the finances and everything to the end and what they were going to do with the money. And they kind of felt they should have brought that a little bit forward. But what about you, Peter?
I think what was very useful about the format was that it had to be done very briefly. And what it forced me to do was to say, here's the problem, here's the solution. And all the kind of nuances, how one deals with it, people aren't so interested in that. So actually it was a very useful exercise from my point of view to say, here's the problem, here's the solution, and this is how it makes money. And essentially a lot of slides which went into risks and elements like patenting, it was suitable that they were left out. I did get a couple of questions specifically on those points, which were on patenting, and in a solution which affects employment, people were asking about, how does this affect the workforce and so forth, which were very good questions. But I think the main lesson I learned was keep it simple, and you're far more likely to engage interest. And in our case, we were very lucky that one of the judges has followed up as a potential investor now, so that was a benefit.
That's a perfect segue to the next question. What's happened since the event? How are things developed? You might as well carry on that thought, Peter.
I think what was useful about the event was that it coincided with formal engagement with the industry in terms of our case, in terms of manufacturers coming to us and saying, can we trial that? And having that information and the momentum, essentially, of having pitched has meant that we've raised almost £500,000 since then. And, obviously we did a lot of groundwork before then, but essentially it was a classic case of you have an interesting idea, you have market engagement, and when people come to you and say, look, where are you? You say, well, actually, we're at this point. So, it's been, very fortuitous. Those sequence of events, can one predict it? No, but it was just, it worked very well.
Mark, how about yourself?
For us, it's been a bit a tale of two cities on winning the award. That's been a great door opener, and it's been kind of fantastic. We've managed to get into a few other kind of London investment groups, and we've been able to kind of gut. So when they kind of saw, it's like Essex University, they've recognised it, and all the investors around it, they're like, okay, we would like to kind of talk. So that's been helped to kind of validate the idea with that for going forward. On the investor side, we had two great follow-on conversations with two of the investors there, and we'll say one of them, we're hopeful that we can, start closing some money. We haven't closed down the numbers yet; those are still being discussed. But it's been really good with that for moving forward.
And Bravely Cultured have had some success as well. And I know, John, we were emailing about this, weren't we? So they were announced literally a matter of a couple of weeks afterwards as one of 11 startups on the Founders at Cambridge University's programme. And they receive funding also, like you, Peter, but from Parkwalk Advisors and Cambridge Enterprise. And I know that they've been under deep pressure in the Founders Programme, fleshing out the business model and getting to know future customers. So I think they've been doing really well.
So, John, with such a kind of strong outcomes, is this going to be an ongoing annual event, or how do you grow from this kind of position?
The plan is to run regular events, probably 3 a year, to be realistic. During COVID, we ran them far more frequently, and they were online, and they were very well attended, and a lot of activity occurred from that. But the post-COVID, sorry to keep mentioning COVID, but it's a time frame. Post-2023, the move across the industry is to do more face-to-face and to do more live pitch events. And so we are following that trend and going down that road. So we would expect to do 3 a year, I think, comfortably. I will be looking for sponsorship, if anybody's listening, to go forward with this. And I will be looking for some really good opportunities to put forward before investors. So we are still open for business in that respect.
And where do people find the programme if they're listening?
Well, they can email, is the best way. It's UEZ, Uniform Echo Zebra, at essex.ac.uk.
Okay, and we'll pop that in the show notes as well.
The Cambridge Tech Podcast is supported by Rathbones, a leading provider of individual wealth management services to private clients, entrepreneurs, charities and professional partners. For more information, please visit rathbones.com. The value of your investments and the income from them may go down as well as up, and you could get back less than you invested.
So, Mark and Peter, we heard about your startups at the beginning of this segment, but you're both serial entrepreneurs, I believe. So do you want to kind of walk through your experiences and what you learned from those first endeavours and how you've carried those lessons forward to your existing ventures?
I am a serial entrepreneur. My background is finance and investment management. And the path I've taken is to engage with the academic community, because my personal view is that there are incredibly valuable ideas sitting within universities, but it requires a non-scientist entrepreneur to estimate which ones can potentially become a commercial venture. And I think the experience I've learnt is that you have to go through 2 stages. One is persuade the academics that their idea is good, which sounds counterintuitive, but very often they're working on something and they have no idea the value of it. And then you have to educate the rest of the world. And essentially, if I look at my skills, it's essentially taking an idea, bringing the academic team together, then bringing funding, and then educating the marketplace. So that's been my journey. And everyone laughs at me because I'm the only person in my business who doesn't have a doctorate or is a professor. But so much of the process is where I say, this is really valuable, let's do this. And there's general incredulity from everyone. And you need a certain persistence in bringing everyone on that path. And then ultimately you get investors, and then you get essentially the industry saying, oh, actually, this is really useful. So that's my personal journey.
And have you done that assessment a number of times with Essex University?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
Yes.
And how are those other ventures?
So I have another business which is a brain imaging business using quantum technology, and that's in revenue, and that's very successful. And once again, I have no experience in quantum technology other than identifying applications in the real world. So, but these are not overnight processes. That is a business I set up 5 years ago that's doing very well now.
Excellent. And Mark, you touched on the fact that this product came about by solving a problem of your own that you had to solve, and you've made it available to obviously other customers. So how's the experience of growing that original business, and what lessons have you carried forward?
if I was trying to kind of piece it up, I think one of the kind of the key things is you have to take time for yourself to go to enhance yourself. And what I mean by is going and getting coaching and stuff. And I know, like, because I'm an engineer and my first company was very much about software engineering, and, you know, it's one of my passions and I still enjoy cutting code when I can. But I've had to kind of, you know, stand back and go and listen to John, listen to other coaches to help improve of what I am doing, not in the engineering kind of side, but it's in running the business and thinking about what you need to kind of focus on for setting up the next startup. You know, one of my lessons, which I would say that, you know, I've kind of learned, which I took forward from CodeRush into AppNalysis, is building a framework and putting pieces into place. Where my first company started organically, it built, we got clients, it's successful, we participate in East Anglia and everything with that. However, AppNalysis has been a little bit more methodology of putting things into place, making sure we've, you know, thinking about patents, trademarks, copyright and all of those sort of things, which I didn't even think about before. And that's where, you know, going on to courses like for the Goldman Sachs 10,000, which is a great course, a Creative East, in getting the mentorship from there. You know, on first course, you're like, really? Do I have to allocate a certain amount of time? But after going through it, I can completely recommend anybody do it. It's going to push you. You're going to sweat. It's going to be hard work, but it is so worth going through that thinking, but also joining those networks to understand, because it's been then great to then go and bounce ideas off. I'm having this problem. Who can I now talk to? Which we now have, but I didn't when I started CodeRush.
And it's great to hear as well that even serial entrepreneurs still go back and look for that extra assistance. And I know when I spoke to James and kind of asked him this question as well, he was, you know, they're not serial founders. They've come up with this great idea that they want to change the world with, but it hasn't been the easiest of starts because they're learning everything. So I think he said it was basically a bit of a roller coaster. And so they've done all the usual stuff that a lot of startups do. They've had to pivot a few times. They've had lots of difficult conversations, but they at least feel like they're now coming out of it at the other end, you know, and starting to come up with some real plans, which is great.
You've got to be thinking of, you know, where the destination is might not be where you started. And so pivoting, rethinking about, you know, what we've even learned through AppNalysis, you know, initially there were, you know, two personas, which were, you know, the traditional app owners and product owners, but talking and understanding and using the product, you know, we've identified 10 other personas that we can see can use the product, but we didn't think about that when we first started. So yeah, you've definitely got to be expecting change and kind of reevaluate your thinking for going forward.
That's great. So really useful conversation. We have a good audience on the listening into the podcast. So what's next? You know, what's coming up for you? What's your next stage of development? Are there any areas that you need some additional help with?
Just in regards to our robotics business, the next 6 months is going to be critical because we're putting our robots in a factory, and there will be a significant learning curve and potentially some pivots, but that's very exciting, and we want to learn from that process so that the product, when it goes to market, is fully tested, and we can then potentially have the high class problem of too much demand, and how you then structure your business in terms of making sure you can deliver a product which is not just a technical solution, but it's providing a service which is very effective for the end user. So those are the developments that are taking place over the next 6 months.
Our next steps is we're really kind of pushing the marketing of the product and stuff. You know, we were down at London Excel talking about AppNalysis and getting some really great feedback. So next week, we're going to be down at London at Promotions, which is one of the kind of premier shows of advertising, marketing services for mobile apps. So we're really looking forward to going down there and talking to other companies in the space, because it's the first time we've actually taken the lid off in a public space like that. So we're kind of going down, and we're kind of really excited to see how some of our competitors will think about it, but also we are also looking for partners as well, because we can see the way that we can support other companies for going forward.
Yeah, no, that's great. And going out, telling the story is actually incredibly important. That's where James is at Bravely Cultured. They're in Paris, a cosmetics event, doing exactly the same thing. They're a small organisation. They're now looking at trying to get the concept out of the laboratory. So they're recruiting. So they've got posts up on their LinkedIn page for different roles. And they're starting to get into their next funding round discussions as well. So pretty exciting times for them too.
So, final question to you, John. I mean, you touched on the fact that you're aiming to run the event 3 times a year, which would indicate that there's a very healthy pipeline of fresh startups coming through and a lot of investor interest. So, what's your temperature check on the health of tech in the east of England?
I've always said this. Tech is hidden behind the hedgerows. You don't see it, you don't know it's there, and you have to prize it out. It always surprises me how technically minded the population in the east of England is. And we've seen some fantastic opportunities come through purely by word of mouth. It's who you know, who knows what you do. And I emphasise to all founders, make sure that everybody you talk to knows who you are and what you do, because that's the network that actually works very well. You need to have a network around you. You need to have good, solid advisors around you, people that you trust and respect, and who trust and respect you as well. All of these things are so important. But yeah, the tech is there. I mean, I'm involved with offshore renewable catapults. I'm involved with the Space East catapult. I'm involved with the creative industries, and we're working with life sciences, with biomed, as well as the robotics and the AI that we get on a regular basis. So we have so many different sectors, and to me, they all cross over. To me, you can't compartmentalise these businesses into any one sector. They cross over so many sectors now. And that's the way I think. I think laterally rather than in straight lines.
It's going to be exciting to see who else comes through. Now, my question to you, seeing as everyone seems to be totally offended at my use of the alarm clock, and do you want a gong or a whistle next time?
Anything that's loud. And Faye, that's why I chose you to be my MC. Because
you saying I'm loud?
I like how you said next time, assuming they're going to be invited back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
By popular demand.
I think Faye is going to be a regular feature at our events. I see this coming because the comments again that I got back was fantastic, MC. Perfect.
Oh! I didn't even ask him to say that. That's just awesome. And James is getting annoyed now.
And can I have commission on all these fees that you're going to be charging all these other angel groups who are going to be knocking at your door to run them?
No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for coming over and talking to us at the podcast. We really appreciate it. Thanks to John, Peter, Mark.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It will really help others discover the show.
If you are a startup looking to grow in Cambridge, the Bradfield Centre offers a range of flexible membership packages which put you in control of your office and home working mix. There's a vibrant, collaborative atmosphere, on-site cafe, plenty of green outside space, and regular member social events. For more information, visit bradfieldcentre.com or call 01223 919 600.